Hello, and welcome to the SaWGuy podcast.
Like scary movies? What's your favorite scary movie?
Here's Johnny.
We'll tear your soul apart.
The boogeyman is real, and you found him.
Game over, man. Game over.
What do you want?
I want to hear you scream. From the front time, bitch!
First I played with Dad, then Mommy came and I played with Mommy. We played, Daddy. We had an awful good time. Now I want to play with you.
I want to play with you. That fucking scene gets me every time, dude. Oh, man, shit. Well, anyways, welcome to the SaWGuy podcast. As always, y'all know I'm the SaWGuy. And yeah, I'm bringing you episode 28 on Pet Sematary. And when I talk about Pet Sematary, everybody's light bulb goes on and says, I know that's a Stephen King film. Honestly, I believe that it's this film and everybody remembers, oh, Stephen King, it's tied into it. That's how popular this film was. That's how good the book was, and vice versa, right? But anyways, like I said, I wanted to talk about this episode because there's all this new recent development now that they're going to do a remake, and it's coming out in 2019. I know, right? What the fuck? How can you remake this film when you have, Fred Gwynne, the guy who played Herman Munster? You can't top that, More of my thoughts later towards this episode, but as of right now, I'm going to break it down like I always do. And well, anyways, if you haven't seen Pet Sematary, first thing I'm going to get started on is you got the book and you got the movie. And there's going to be a little bit of difference with the book versus the movie and vice versa, so take it as a grain of salt. I might explain a couple things here and there that was in the movie or not in the book and da-da-da-da-da. But anyways, let me break it down for you. If you haven't seen Pet Sematary, the movie goes down like this. It follows a family, the Creed family. You got a husband, you got a wife, you got two kids. And, the husband, Lewis Creed, he's a doctor. I guess he gets promoted, he gets transferred, something happens. And he ends up being the doctor in the University of Maine. So, him and his family, they pack up, they move, they go to Maine. And the movie starts where it shows the cemetery. And then has this weird fucking music playing, right? It trips you out because the if you ever seen Pet Sematary, the main theme song is the one from the Ramones, Pet Sematary. But instead they went with this creepy intro. I don't know why, but it worked. Anyways, the family gets moved in. They're getting settled, and then their daughter comes out, rides this the tire on a rope shit on the tree, swinging around. She falls down, and, they take the baby out of the car. And out of all things, they leave the fucking baby out. Who does that? Right? Sorry. I know. My instinct comes out like, man, if that was my kid, he'd be glued to my ass. And I think half of my generation that's watching this right now would probably agree. But anyways, so as this going on, the kid, he wanders off into this road. The house is like, this far out, but then the road is like super close because they bought a house like in the middle of nowhere in Maine. They have in the countryside, I should say, right? Well, anyways, the kid starts walking over there. Fred Gwynne, his character comes out. He plays a character named Judd Crandall. And I love his acting in this. Oh my God, it's so over the top. He plays with a southern accent, like he was a farmer boy and stuff like that. He picks up the baby because the baby's name is Gage. Oh, not there, my friend, not today. He introduced himself to the family and everything. Then they said, hey, we noticed there's this path over here. And then, that's when he busts out the accent. Oh, yeah, that's a good story. I'll tell you about that one day, when you get settled in. I suck at impressions, but whatever. But anyways, so the family gets settled in and all that stuff. And, later on, not that same day, but the next day, they go on that walk. And then they start talking about how the road was just so fucking brutal. It was killing cats. It was killing dogs. And these people that lived in this, the stretch of road, they basically developed their own pet cemetery. And what's funny is that they misspelled cemetery as with a S instead of a C. And, they note that and everything in the movie. Then the mom, what was her name on there? I know it was played by Denise Crosby. Rachel, that was her name. But anyways, Rachel, she was like, well, this cemetery's built off of broken-hearted children and their tears. And Judge Crandall was basically like, well, you got to teach them about death sometime. And then she just blew a fit. Well, why? And I really do like that theme, because this film, there's a lot of themes into it. I'll get more into that towards the end of the episode and tell you my thoughts on that. But back onto the movie, his daughter, Daddy, there's a goldfishy. And then, he tells the story that, hey, it's not all these animals that were killed by the road. Some people had some good pets that lasted forever or lasted a long time. And, simply they just passed on from old age, And then that's when it raises the question of, what is death? How do you cope with death? And things like that. Stephen King, he played a lot of that aspect in the book and also in the movie. And, so what, later on, it's the end of the night, Lewis, he's sitting there relaxing, trying to get settled in. His daughter comes talking about their cat Church, because they had a cat named Winston Churchill, but his name was Church. And then she starts talking about death, about him, and, he basically comes out and says, well, it's God's choice, Well, God can have his own cat. He can make his own, not mine, not mine. So it played a little bit of that aspect. After she gets settled in bed, they tuck her and the cat in. He goes across the street to go and talk to Judd. Lewis did. And then, I thought it was pretty cool, He's like, oh, yeah, hey, is that you, Doc? Yeah, I'm coming up. They share a beer. You want a glass? Nah, I'm good. And then he's like, my man, Hey, I'm a dude. I like beer, so I could relate, Then he starts telling him a little bit about the path and stuff. Like, yeah, it's a pet cemetery. And then he tells him a little bit of story. I think that scene actually happened before they went on the walk. So, quote me if I'm wrong down here, because I know I've seen this movie. Like I said, every movie that I do for an episode, I watch like 10 times throughout the week. So sometimes it gets jumbled up. But anyways, after all that shit goes down, then Lewis, he finally starts his first day as a doctor at the University of Maine. And, they decided, okay, we're going to get the cats fixed. And they have a maid with them that comes and goes sometimes. And, they didn't really get into her character too much in the movie. But in the book, they explained a little bit more about her. But her name was Missy. And she would go in there and she would help them. I guess she was kind of like a caretaker of the place. I don't know how that works out there when you have a house in the middle of the countryside. I guess there's a caretaker or something, But anyways, she would do like their laundry and basic stuff. And, she told the little girl, what was the little girl's name? I wrote it down somewhere. Ellie Creed, that's her name. Ellie Creed. She told the little girl that the cat's nuts are going to get chopped off. Then the mom was like, yeah, he'll come back fine. And Lewis, he, seen his daughter distraught already. He was telling his wife, like, hey, it's a 1 in 1,000 shot, but the cat can go under, and if that cat dies under, you explain it, not me, So they kind of had a little bit of bickering. Missy leaves, and then she's like, yeah, I never knew what it was like to, marry a doctor. Hell, I'd never been married, right? So as they're leaving, Missy, I guess... No, she had left and then it came back or whatever. And then, the doctor was trying to be nice, Dr. Creed. And he was basically like, hey, I could take a look at your, belly if you like. She was like, no, it goes away. Don't worry. She's one of those old bickering ladies, Rachel, she comes out with Gage. They basically said, okay, I'm sorry, blah, 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 blah. Kiss, make up, whatever. Then all of a sudden it fast forwards into like how he's working at the University of Maine. Well, this guy, he was jogging. They never said much about him in the movie. They described a little bit about him in the book, His name was Victor Pascal. And he was a student there. I think he was a student. That's what the book said. And he was jogging and he was hit by one of those trucks that go up and down that road. And so they bring him in. Lewis is like, all right, fuck it. We got to do it by the book. Try to save him. And once they closed the sheets, he knew he was already dead. So he's like, fuck. So he's, telling him about his issues with his wife. And then all of a sudden he wakes up and then grabs him and says, the soil of a heart. Or what does he say? The heart of a soil. So, God damn it. I wrote this all down and I remembered it. The soil of a man's heart is stone yaw. That's what he meant to say. And he said his name, Lewis. And he's like, how the fuck do you know my name? And he goes, I'll come for you. Don't worry. And then he dies. And then Later on, it's the end of the night. He's with the family, and then he goes to sleep. Well, Victor Pascal, I was going to say Pascal, he comes to him, and he basically wakes him up and says, okay, I'm here to warn you because you tried to help me. I'm going to help you and do this favor. I'm a good ghost. He takes him to Pet Sematary, and then he basically tries to tell him that ground is sour. What you're going to do later on, don't fucking do it. And Lewis, he didn't think nothing of it. He was like, well, it's not my fault that you died. I did everything that I could. He didn't understand the concept. He thought it was all a dream. So all of a sudden, he lays down on like the ground and shit. He wakes up and he's like, oh, it's a fucking dream. Pulls up the cover. He has dirt all over his feet and shit, right? And then it fast forwards into Thanksgiving. And the family's going, his wife, Gage, and his daughter, Ellie, they were going to go back to Chicago to be with Rachel's family. Rachel's family didn't like Lewis. And he was just like, fuck it, you go see the family. I'll be here. No worries. They go and leave. And then that's when Judd calls him and says, hey, there's a dead cat out here. It might be yours. So, here it's wintertime in Maine. So they're all bundled up and shit. Goes up. Yeah, it's the cat church. And he knows his daughter was all distraught. So he's like, well, fuck, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, I don't want to ruin their holidays and everything like that. So Judd says, oh, you know what? I got an idea. And they ended up walking through that path and then back up to Pet Cemetery. And then they go to the burial ground. And the meaning behind the burial ground, it's from the Micmac Native Indian tribe, right? And they used it, the Native Americans used it over there. That's the story or the legend. And it went sour because of the demon, Wendigo, I think his name was. I can't remember. Yeah, Wendigo. That was the name of the Micmac demon, right? And the movie was supposed to include it, and I know the book did, the movie didn't, but they had a couple of different sounds. Like, you hear the woo, and then everyone's like, what the fuck? And then that's when Judd tells him, oh, it's just a crane, whatever, And it was basically warning them, don't do it. So what did Lewis do? He gets up there, and then Judd tells him the whole story about Pet Sematary and says, okay, well, you bury your own. What you own always comes back to you. So, they did the whole rules where they, dug the hole. He had to dig the hole, put the cat in, and then after he put the cat in, he put the rocks and shit, and then thought nothing of it. And then when they got back to the house, Joe was telling him the same thing that Victor Pascal was telling him. He was telling him, the soil of a heart's man is Sonya, Lewis. So he was like, what the fuck? So he's having deja vu now at this point. Then after everything had happened, he goes down to the cellar and he sees the fucking cat still alive. And he's just tripping out like, what? Then he goes to feed the cat, and then he picks up the cat and is looking at him like, how the hell is this possible, right? Cat scratches him and shit. He goes and hangs out with Judd. Judd tells him, oh, yeah, whatever, he was just as dead. He was laying out there frozen onto the ground. And then that's when he asked him, anybody, buried a real person out there? Oh, heavens, no. Why would they, right? Scene cuts. Family's back from, vacationing, from Thanksgiving. And after all that, they decide to have a picnic outside. They have a picnic outside. They're having a good old family time. And again, nobody's watching the fucking baby, right? They're flying a kite and everything. And then all of a sudden, Lewis turns around. He sees the kid goes and grabs the kite or tries to chase after the kite. This truck is coming, blasting fucking Ramones, by the way. Super fast. He starts chasing after him to stop his baby so he doesn't go in the street. And what happens? He falls, typical horror film. And then the kid gets hit. Wham! And it's just like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, that's a brutal scene, And they show, like, flashbacks of everything. They hit you on the nerve with it. They really did. And, at the funeral scene, you see Rachel's dad and him, they have a scuffle because he's like, you're a piece of shit. Where were you when your son was there? How come you weren't there? So they all went crazy and everything. I mean, it's a sad, surreal moment. And then that's when his daughter came and started talking to him about death and God and stuff. And it's got a little weird things to it, tied in. And so after everything had happened, he basically told Rachel and the kid, Ellie, to go up there, back with the family, stay up there. Because he was going to go back up there, but he said, I'm going to handle some things down here for a bit. And he didn't say what they were. He just said he was going to handle things. Well, long behold, Lewis decided to dig up his son and put him in Pet Sematary. Which is like, what the fuck? Everybody's telling you, don't do that. And he did, you know. And as this was going on, Victor Pascal, he was trying to, alert his daughter, Ellie Creed. And Ellie Creed was telling, the mom, like, Paxcow, with an X, Paxcow, Paxcow. And then she was like, what the hell? I know I heard that name. And then the ghost was right behind her, kind of guiding her, saying, Pascal. And that's when, the mom flipped out, Rachel, and she couldn't get a hold of anybody, so she calls Judd. Judd's like, no, I haven't seen him. Okay, I'm coming back. So her journey, it shows her journey coming back and everything, dealing with all this shit. Victor Pascal, he's trying to help her, he's watching her on the plane, making sure she gets the car, and then making sure she gets picked up by a hitchhiker, by a truck driver while she's hitchhiking and shit. While that's going on, it shows that Creed, he's all distraught, and who would it be? He buries his son at Pet Sematary at the Micmac tribe, at the burial ground. He goes back home. He knocks out. Well, by the time he knocks out, Gage is already out and coming walking around, and then that's when Church follows him, minions of hell kind of thing. Goes through his dad's stuff because he's a doctor, gets a scalpel, and goes across the street. And as Judd is outside in his patio, smoking a cigarette and drinking, he wakes up to hearing these noise, and it's Gage who's awakened, and he's not the same, right? And he kind of fucks with Judd a little bit, and then the cat comes and distracts him, then he cuts his Achilles tendon, then he goes and cuts his mouth with the scalpel, and then he bites his fucking neck off, and it's like, whoa, intense ass scene, And then later on, Rachel finally gets home, and then she starts hearing these noises, And I completely missed the fact that she had a sister. Well, anyways, before I get into that, she tells this whole story about how she had a sister named Zelda who had spinal meningitis. She was kind of like a bastard child. They just stuck her away in a room and no one would take care of her except Rachel. And Rachel just got tired of it, and then she's just like, I wish she was dead, As she's thinking that thought, that's when her sister had actually passed away. And she felt kind of grief-stricken with it. That's why she always kind of struggled with death. And when she goes in to go see Judd, well, at his house, she went over there because she was hearing, like, Zelda's voice. So she goes and sees Zelda all twisted up, like, and I'll make sure your back is all twisted and you'll never get out of bed again. Never, never, never. And, creepy scene. Because it's not actually a woman. It's actually a dude playing her. And, They didn't talk so much about it in the movie, but in the book, they like, detailed everything, But, she's all grief-stricken, and she believes that her sister Zelda is pissed off because her sister Zelda knew that she wanted her to die, just end it, not deal with it, So, I guess it plays off this notion that Zelda has come back from beyond the grave to haunt them, and is basically controlling Gage in a dark spiritual way, So she sees Gage, and she's dressed up, Gage is dressed up like in this painting that at her parents' house that looks exactly like Zelda in this old school fucking, school outfit, right? And then he's basically saying, I have something for you, mommy, and she's grief-stricken, she doesn't understand. And then it just cuts away where he, like, walks up to her, and you just hear these screams and what? Oh, man. Creepy as fuck, because that less is more. Less is more, It plays a lot onto that, Then Creed finally wakes his lazy ass up. He sees that Gage had came in, grabbed his shit, and he was just, like, tripping out. And then that's when he gets a phone call from, Rachel's dad. It says, hey, I just want to make sure that my daughter made it okay. Yeah, she did. Well, you want to talk to Ellie? Because, like, she's freaking out thinking that her mom died because Paxcal was telling the daughter everything. And he's like, I can't talk. Hangs up. The phone rings again. I can't fucking talk. Then that's when Gage says the line, in the beginning. I play with Judd. Then I play with mommy. Now I want to play with you. I don't know if that was the kid's voice, but they did really fucking good. The actor, whoever did it. So anyways, he gears up, goes out, and he sees Church, feeds him a raw piece of meat, grabs him, then he, injects him with morphine or something to knock him out. And then, he's yelling at him, play dead, play dead. Then he goes in, and he's looking for his son, and then he finds Judd, And then later on, he goes looking around, and then that's when that has that jump scare with his wife coming down, and she's hanging on a noose. He comes down, the little kid starts gutting him and everything, and then he throws the kid back, and after that, he calls his son over. And it was a kind of a surreal, fucked up moment that he had to take out his son a second time. Then that's after when he gave him the injection, the kid walks away, and he's saying, "No fair, no fair." Knocks out, and he's done. And then that's when he starts to realize, oh shit. Gets gasoline, lights Judd's house on fire, takes his wife out, and so his dead son, Judd, and Church, they're all burning up in the house. And as he's walking away, Pascal says, "Hey, I'm sorry. I tried to warn you." And he goes, "No, no, 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 no. My Rachel just died. It will work this time. You know, she's still fresh. I'll go take her out there." And Pascal tried to save him. Dumbass went back up there at the Micmac burial ground and buried Rachel. He goes back home. He's playing solitary, you know, on the floor. Rachel comes in. It shows that half her face is all gouged out and shit. He goes up to his wife, grief-stricken. He kisses her. She grabs a knife, and then it ends like in a black screen. No! And then it starts playing Pet Sematary from the Ramones. That was a great fucking movie. I know I missed a lot of stuff. I skipped a lot of stuff, and I know I didn't talk about Zelda enough, but you know what? Now that I'm done with that, I'm going to bring out all the main fucking points that I want to talk about. And the first main point I want to talk about is the themes. This movie had a lot of dark-ass themes to it. Had a lot of themes. The main one I got is, watch your fucking kids. You know, so that way they don't run out to the street and stuff like that. That's a joke, by the way. Come on now. That's a joke. But, in all actuality, though, it played a lot on the aspects of how do you deal with death, you know? How do you deal with life after death? You know, and Judd Crandall, he quoted it very well in this series, was, you know, once the bad memories are gone, and when they're gone, the good memories could start, they can remember the good memories, or something along those lines. And that line really stuck out to me, like, whoa, you know? Because I've been there. You know, where you've lost a few, and it's sad, and it's stuck, and it sucks when you have to go through it, but then, you know, when you start thinking about things, it's like, whoa, you know, the memory is always there. The good times are always there. As long as you remember them, they're never gone, you know? It played a lot in that aspect, and it hit me, like, whoa, okay. I got to talk about this theme, because out of all the other things I've seen on Pet Sematary, other podcasts, no one really talks about that theme, you know? But that theme really got to me. It really did. Another thing that I noticed, it was talking about Zelda. Like I said, it was played by a man. And the whole story of Pet Sematary, it you know, each person who was buried in there, or each animal that was buried in there, everybody had a different experience, you know? They had a different experience where it came back. Obviously, it wasn't themselves, but they would be like a zombie. The ones that Louis Creed buried, you know, whether it was Church or his son, or even his wife, it had to play with the aspect of Zelda controlling them to go after and kill them, you know. And I believe that when Zelda had died in this movie, she basically said that she was going to come back and haunt them, and that's basically what this whole movie was about. It's more of a ghost story than anything, you know. And it trips me out because it doesn't really talk too much about it, and it keeps giving it away, you know. Like, there's a scene where, after she had talked to her daughter and said something about I can't even say his name. I want to say Pascal, right? And she's just right there, and then you see the big ass painting right behind her of Zelda, you know, holding the cane and walking. Well, it looked like her holding the cane and walking because she had the meningitis in her back. But also, too, if you actually, you know, pause it for a second, there's a fucking black cat on the ground that looks exactly like Church. You know, it's maybe it's coincidental, I don't know, but it was showing what was going to happen later on, you know, because Gage, he used Church to help him out to attack Judd, to go after, you know, Louis. So, I mean, it played a lot of that aspect. It really did, you know. A lot of other different things that just kind of stood out to me, you know. Originally, when this film was made, Stephen King, when he would write a book, people would buy the rights and do it, right? after no one gave a shit about his stories until after Carrie, and then everyone's like, oh, we need to buy all of his books, buy all the rights. And that's what they did. Well, an interesting note, Pet Sematary was bought by George Romero. George Romero, he bought it for $10,000, and he basically shelved it. He did not give a shit about Pet Sematary, which kind of sucks because he could have made it very good if he ever did his own version. Obviously he can't now, but I mean at the time he could have made a damn good version of it. But that's the reason why later on we got Creepshow, because he knew he fucked up. And this is all the research I've been doing. This is not my own opinion. He basically, I guess, felt bad about not doing Pet Sematary, so he was like, okay, well, let's collaborate together and let's do Creepshow. And that's what he did. And, when that was going on, where he was making Creepshow and everything, Paramount, they bought the rights from him. And when they bought the rights from him, Stephen King was in the middle of this whole thing and said, you know what? If Paramount buys the rights to my book, I want to make sure my hands are all over on it. I want to make sure it's done right. So he made sure that they shot it in Maine, down the street where he lived, actually, that he would write the screenplay. He wrote it with a few other people, but it was his final say on the screenplay. And he watched, them film the whole movie, He basically, that's why Pet Sematary stands out compared to all the other Stephen King horror films, is because Stephen King, he had his most of his time put into Pet Sematary out of all of his films. And it just blew me away. Like, whoa, what the fuck? No wonder why it had that creepy-esque feel. Like, there's subtle differences, not a whole lot. Not as much as, like, It or, some of his other stories that he did. But he had his hands in everything with this film. Everything from who he wanted to cast and stuff like that and different things. And obviously because George Romero couldn't direct, Stephen King went after the top-of-the-line music video director, who her name was, let me see here, Mary Lambert. I was going to say Denise Crosby. No, that's the one who played Rachel. But Mary Lambert, she was a well-known director because she would do music videos, direct them, but she would do like outlandish ones. She did like, what's that song? Like a Prayer by Madonna. She did a lot of videos for the Ramones, and she was good friends with them. And she knew that Stephen King was good friends. He was a huge fan of the Ramones because Stephen King liked punk music. So they worked out something, they all introduced each other, and then that's when Stephen King presented the idea to her to say, hey, can you get the Ramones to do the soundtrack? Which is why, if you look it up, there's only 2 songs by the Ramones that's actually on the soundtrack. Pet Sematary being one, and then the other one, I think Sheila was a punk rocker. I think, I don't know, I might have fucked that up. Let me know in the comments, because I know they play like a brief second of it, and I'm just like, ah. But yeah, that's how all the interesting thing works together to this, I was just amazed that, like, holy shit, And then Wendigo, I know I talked a little bit about that. That was the Micmac tribe demon, and, you hear about it in the book, how they see the demon, or they see something, The movie, you only hear it, that one scene where they're going up there, and then they start talking about it. Well, they don't talk about it in the movie, but, when the trees and shit starts falling, and then he starts seeing shit when he's carrying his son, trying to take him to the Micmac burial ground to rejuvenate him from the Pet Sematary. That's why I was like, woo, well, that would have been cool if they had to, if they would have included, showed something of it, maybe a glimpse, but obviously, it was budget constraints. That's all it was, But they still did a good job of at least, subtle things in there into it. They really did, And then also, too, originally, what I thought was funny, too, is that they wanted Bruce Campbell, out of all people. Bruce fucking Campbell. Yeah, the Ash versus Evil Dead guy. They wanted him to play the main character of Lois Creed. Or Lewis. Why did I say Lois? Lewis. And to me, I think that would have been pretty cool. You have George Romero directing with him being in a serious role. It would have been a different film. It really would, But what we got is still good enough. I'm not going to complain. I love this fucking film. I still watch it all the time. Even when, like I said, when I don't do my episodes, I still put it on, But there's a lot of little interesting things with it. And what I thought was crazy, too, is Stephen King, he did his research, When he was living out there in Maine, he heard about, there's different telltales and, they call it creepypasta now. But it was like creepy stories and shit. And he would hear these things about a native Indian burial ground, different things. How they say, oh, there's a native Indian burial ground and stuff. It's haunted, And he did his research and found out that it was actually a real tribe. The Micmac tribe is a real tribe that, a real native tribe that was in Maine at that time. And I thought, what the hell? So when I was researching for this episode, I looked it up and, sure enough, like Stephen King, he does every little detail on all of his books that kind of ties in a little bit into the movie. But the fact that he had a lot more hands in this movie than any other ones was just like, whoa, okay. Stephen King did his homework, and he did a fantastic job on this film. He really did. But what's funny is how everything was all brought into this. They tie in all that with the themes and all that stuff. My main thing that I always wanted to know, real quick before I end this episode, is why the fuck did they not talk more about Pascal? If you've seen the movie, he basically gets brought in. Lewis, he tries to help him for like 2 seconds. And then he's like sitting there, and then he's like, well, he's just as done, he's dead, let's call it. I mean, and him wanting to be a good ghost to help him, they didn't explain that shit. They didn't explain it enough. Which I think later on, in the remake, back to what I was talking about in the beginning of this episode, they're doing a remake. You got the guy who played in Terminator Genesis as John Connor. Oh, God, I can't stand this one. They had John Lithgow. Yeah, he was a dad from Harry and the Hendersons, and he's a comedian. For him to be like in a like actual serious kind of role, I don't think it's gonna go down. But I have been wrong before. Don't quote me on this. I think it's got potential if done right. It really does. For me, I don't think this film deserves to be remade. I mean, you made it so damn good. I mean, how are you gonna top that? That's my opinion on it. But what I thought was cool was how it ties in all of that, and still, to this day, what was it, 1989? So that would be 29 years old. I mean, next year will be 30 years when they actually release the remake. So how crazy is that, right? I mean, for what this was for Pet Sematary, they did a great damn job on it. They had fine acting in it. I mean, even though Fred Gwynne was on the twilight of his years, I tried not to pay attention so much into his accent, because every time I think of Fred Gwynne, I think of Herman Munster. I mean, that just automatically, every role that he does, even in My Cousin Vinny. But yeah, I mean, overall they did pretty good on it. They did a lot of little winks. But anyways, like I said, wow. I think I said it all, I just kind of went quiet right there. But I think I said it all. Hope you enjoyed this episode on Pet Sematary. Hope you tune in to Pet Sematary. And if you're watching this before or after the remake, who knows? Maybe it might be good. Maybe it might be bad. Who knows? Well, only way to find out next year in April when it comes out, right? But anyways, thanks again for tuning in, guys. And like I said, once I'm out, you all know where everything goes, right?
Bow down to the